This world I left behind. So you call me insane, 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 insane. I've been poisoned by the lie. So much live among your kind. From the moment I was spoke, I've been freezing all the time. Another day, another one inside. Go on without a sea. Who brought you back to fire?
What's happening? Benton here. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Pirate Radio for the Zombie Apocalypse. That was a bit of a zombie apocalypse there towards the end of the broadcast yesterday. What do you think about that? And I want to get into some of the events near the end of the broadcast yesterday. And as always, or as usual, or as recently, I have copious notes. And welcome, folks. Shout out to the chat. Thanks for being here. It is Saturday morning. What's up? Good to see you. Enjoy the, I like your new profile pic there. Indeed, Sun and Taurus for What's Up, I'm assuming. Top of the morning to you and at Benton and chat, indeed. And I'm going to a little bit of a different format. If some of you may have noticed, I've got actually scheduled 2 lives for this morning, 2 live streams rather. And so I'm planning on keeping the first live stream, and I'm going to use this format unless it annoys me. But the first live stream will be somewhere around an hour to an hour and a half. And that will be mostly for the folks that want to hear me go solo. Unless I choose to bring on a singular guest, the plan is for me to solo that first live stream. And then the second live stream will be the Benton School of Broadcasting. And that will be panel driven. And today's topic, Panels 101. And in fact, it may be Panels 101 for quite some time, because that's really my main area of focus, where I need to work on with respect to broadcasting is panels, as you may have noticed. Shout out real quick to Aphrodite Rose Starfire. Miss Starfire was nice enough to bless us with her presence yesterday. She's always good for ratings. And thank you, Kim. I will have some critiques of Kim before the storm, but I do want to thank him for facilitating the conversation on a human level with Ms. Starfire, since your boy Benton here tends to go off into the realm of ideas, although, and maybe we'll wait till the Benton School of Broadcasting live stream. It would have been nice to discuss Brave New World as a topic, especially considering that our special guest, Ms. Starfire, had broached the subject. One of my favorite topics, indeed. Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World. Good to see you, Quantum Epic. I am not Mr. Fix-It. In fact, I do have that tendency, though, as many of us males do, or men more specifically. And Carl wants to know, are we going to be going over parliamentary procedure? Not as far as I know, sir. and this will be a bit of a scattershot as the ideas, come to me, especially with the help of the chat. Uh, and I will say this: I have no idea what Wizard's talking about, and this is not a pejorative or a negative. When people go off onto these detailed descriptions, as Wizard often does, talking about by the way, my loud ass booming voice wakes up the motel. And remember, I have absolutely no processing on my voice here, so I don't know that the mic fully picks up the bass in my voice necessarily. And in fact, part of my years of living in the streets as a homeless person, living out of a backpack, traveling all around the country, part of that was I encountered so many meth heads. And meth heads initially were my kryptonite, or more specifically, my kryptonite was very detailed storytelling. And these meth heads love to tell stories with lots and lots of details. With my hypervigilance, again, I don't have ADD, I have the opposite. I have too much focus. I found it nearly impossible to tune them out. And so I've actually trained myself when people go into lots of details. And the reason for this is that's not my learning style. I don't learn from taking in a discourse, audibly, although I do enjoy lectures. That's a bit of a paradox. But that's more of something I enjoy versus how I pick up and learn information and process information. Mine, I'm highly visual. I need to read it. So if we could get a transcript of what Word Wizard was saying towards the end of the broadcast yesterday, if I could read that, I'm sure it's chock full of helpful information. That would benefit me greatly. So I actually, whenever he goes off on one of those, my brain I've now trained myself, I just automatically tune out. So I have no idea what he's talking about. But I do understand that many people do take in information, in that form, in that detailed form audibly. So certainly there's a benefit to someone, right? Indeed, Quantum Epic. Yeah, I better watch out for my loud booming mouth. Well, in fact, I've noticed just a strong, firm, loud, masculine voice coming from someone who looks like me can oftentimes people find that very annoying in certain cases. I've noticed a lot of prejudice, believe it or not, in spite of my so-called white privilege. In spite of that, quite a bit of prejudice directed towards a fellow such as myself. You may find that surprising. Quantum Epic, time for school. That's right. Level up at Benton School of Broadcasting. Clay Extra Dense, thank you, sir. And what I like about Benton School of Broadcasting is, I am the teacher at times, possibly, but I'm more frequently a student. And I reached out, and I don't like that term reached out, but I did reach out to Mr. Chalkbody Outline. I'm hoping that he will come up with some sort of Benton School of Broadcasting themed thumbnail. And in fact, this broadcast is the debut on this channel of one of Drew's thumbnails that he made back in the day with a Benton theme. So I got to be honest, not one of my favorites of Drew's work, but he's done so much great work in the thumbnail realm. I don't know that that's necessarily an insult. But based on my attitude and crankiness and agitation and irritation towards the end of yesterday's broadcast, certainly I felt it was apropos. Good to see you, Thunder Chicken. Shout out to you, sir. Make sure I haven't missed any comments. Yeah, and it's Saturday morning. I'm going to try to chill the fuck out if I can, while also being critical of our boy Kim Before the Storm. Indeed, that is the meaning of the title today, Mr. Fix-It, aka Kim Before the Storm. He's here to solve all of our problems. Yes, indeed. What would we do without Kim Before the Storm just showing up day after day to solve people's problems? I mean, it's really, and hopefully the sarcasm is being detected. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mason Free. Yeah, not a huge fan, honestly, but Drew's work is so top-notch in general. And I was feeling it today, but I would not expect to see that one, too frequently. Oh, goody. Farm life, yes. And I've been up for several hours, of course, waiting. I would have preferred to do this broadcast around 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. However, out of respect for the other occupants of the motel, I decided to wait. Lots of YouTube soul saviors out here, indeed, Carl, and we will get into that. And I even have some comments. And at the top of the broadcast, and by the way, there was a time for the OGs of the channel. You may recall that it really was never officially a Benton broadcast until I apologized to the audience. So let's go ahead and apologize to RT, who I certainly appreciate, and who in fact was an ardent fan of my podcast in the past. So I do appreciate RT. So I do regret that I sort of took out some of my my irritation on him specifically yesterday. That was certainly unwarranted. EBT, also feel bad when I go off on EBT, although he can certainly take it. And he does dish out a bit of it here and there. So I don't know that I feel quite as bad about that one, but certainly would owe Mr. EBT an apology. And I will apologize in the form of recognizing that, my emotionalism had taken over to the point where I failed to realize in the moment that he was correct. Yes, I could in fact go to any revenue office in the state, since it is the state handling the vehicle registration. So of course, EBT was right. How foolish of me to the fact that I detected an error in EBT's thinking, that should have been a red flag to yours truly. So anyway, that's my apology for the day. Let's go back to the notes here. I got a lot of them. Oh, let's look at this JFK Beta video real quick. Shout out to JFK Beta. Maybe I'll do a one-on-one with him here on the channel at some point if he wants to. Hey, all right. Thanks, RT. And I am planning on reading your comments. And I do have a critique. And I actually initially typed kind of a snarky response, and then I deleted it because I realized that really wasn't the direction I wanted to go. You had disparaging remark. Indeed, Scott Core, good to see you. Yes. Well, I do have a nasty streak. You may have noticed. I do have a bit of a nasty streak in me, if we're being keeping it real. But yeah, appreciate you, RT. Always glad to see you around. Certainly would never want to give you reason to not be showing up to the broadcast. And I certainly appreciate everyone's contributions. And in fact, I talked to Big L on the phone yesterday after the broadcast, and I don't know if you guys could detect this. I did not want to out him on the broadcast since he was driving his vehicle, but Big L had been drinking when he called in, when he joined the panel yesterday. And I know him well enough IRL that I was immediately able to detect this. So I did not want to call him out, at least as it was happening, but that certainly would account for some of his commentary yesterday. And I've been trying to get through to Big L, if he ever hears this, that he really, it's foolishness in my view for Big L to attempt to speak on anything relating to conspiracies. And I think I'm probably going to text Big L the link to Chalk Body Outline's recent OOE broadcast, where there were even conspiracies brought up that I've never heard of. And I've been down almost all of the rabbit holes to some extent. So I'm attempting to impress on Big L that, the moment he mentioned, what did he say? The moment he brought up the Anunnaki, and I think maybe I was away from keyboard, but there might have been some talk of the Akashic records. As soon as people heard that, like 12 people of the 62 just immediately left. That is the audience for this broadcast, is people much more intelligent than myself overall, who have an even greater knowledge of conspiracies than myself, and I'm pretty well versed in most of these things. So, and no offense to Big L, but he's still coming up in the conspiracy realm. So I'm encouraging him to maybe address other topics such as crypto. He seems to have a lot of knowledge of crypto, certainly knows way more about it than I do. And I've enjoyed hearing his conversations about crypto with Illuma Tommy, who unfortunately seems to be in the process of breaking bad with yours truly. Now, that's not irony. I'm not attempting to be ironic, but perhaps that statement is ironic, since he refers to Breaking Bad. That's his pet name for methamphetamine. However, I don't care. It's not my concern what substances one puts in their body. It's my thing is it's behavior based, right? And as you may have noticed, my behavior can very quickly devolve into not so great realms, and I'm not on anything. Scott Core says, I find the only thing I can trust currently is my internal moral compass. Indeed, Scott Core, and that's an astute comment. I do like your PFP as well, if that's what we're calling that. Hey, Tranquil Vortex. Awesome to see you around these parts. Welcome, Miss. Good to see you. Indeed, Carl. See, this is Carl. Carl's very, and this is why, as soon as I see commentary, and well, he's going to get too far up his head. Sorry, Carl. I'm not going to. I'm going to do my best not to analyze Carl and his commentary, but this is a great comment. Tommy can't handle being liked. I understand his inner dynamics. He functions best in vitriol-infused dynamics. I agree. I agree with that, Carl. Indeed, I do. I think you're absolutely right. Could not agree more. But back to Scott Gore's comment, and this is where I think astrology can be interesting, because I was looking at my birth chart analysis and I found this new site that I'd never used, and it rates your various characteristics. And according to my chart, I'm not intuitive at all, or I'm very limited in my intuition. But the reality of the matter is that I believe everybody has extremely strong intuition. I think we're all blessed with that. I think we're all that's part of being a human being, the so-called sixth sense. I think we all have it. And for whatever reason, I've been able to tap into it very strongly. So I really think, and I do agree with internal moral compass. However, I think the discernment a lot of times comes down to just, trusting one's gut or intuition, which, by the way, what is intuition? Well, intuition is knowledge or information gained outside of logic and reason. And that's why I don't really need, and I may very well have a double-digit IQ, but I have epiphanies almost every day. I have multiple epiphanies that just pop into my conscious mind, these fully formed concepts. And to me, that's what that is. It's a perception. It's not something that, I came up with through logic and reason. But then logic and reason can certainly be used to deconstruct these concepts and compare and contrast with other concepts, right? And I love it, man. This is a big part of what gets me out of bed every morning is, being able to use my mind and really work on things. And my main practice these days is mastering of my emotions, which you did see yesterday, I believe, is me allowing certain resentments to build up and fester. And then now we have an anger seeking an outlet situation. And then now Kim starts attempting to give me unsolicited advice. And now, okay, here's, now I feel for whatever reason that I'm justified in unleashing some of that emotion, but it's not appropriate, right? The message that I was attempting to deliver, I believe, was appropriate, but the manner in which I delivered it was not. Now, maybe if I would just make fun of him and call him, oh, Mr. Fix-It's here to solve all of our problems, right? Because ultimately that's what's going on. And yeah, healthy gut gives good intuition. Well, I think it certainly helps. And supposedly outside of the brain, that's supposedly where most of our, other than the brain, that's most of our intelligence supposedly is in the gut or the intestines or whatnot, which is, of course, highly dependent on the flora and fauna, right? The gut bacteria. Yeah, there you go. Thunder Chicken says, nice. Yeah, the astrology thing is a trip. What the fuck is this place? I can tell 70 to 80% about someone with their birth data. Yeah, I agree. It shows that fate and free will coexist. Well, and back to the emotional thing, I read an article once where, science claimed, through some kind of study to more or less have proven that people born, deep into the summer months, which would be me, August 12th, are more inclined towards certain like emotional, syndromes or afflictions or problems in their life, which, I think there's probably something to that. And I will note that as a big fan of libraries, at a certain point, I found a book. It was all about inmates that from Texas death row that had been executed. And it was kind of a morbid deal where it had like, their name and their crime. And it also had their date of birth and then like their date of execution. But it also had like their last meal, their last words, if any. There was a disproportionately high number of Leos that had been executed by the state of Texas. I don't know what that's about, but a quick analysis led me to believe, in fact, it was the number one sun sign represented. And this was like probably 100 different people because, Texas does enjoy killing lots of folks. Music Holds a Secret with some John Lennon lyrics from the song Intuition, indeed. As I play the game of life, I try to make it better each and every day. And when I struggle in the night, the magic of the music seems to light the way. Indeed, indeed. Yeah, it really wasn't that much fun. In fact, I finally gave in to my frustration enough that I just ended the broadcast without telling anybody, which is a bit of a shitty thing to do. But well, something else about all this live streaming, I'd gone so far beyond, because usually Paul goes live a little earlier, and I was going to end the broadcast, about the time he went live, and then I called Big L after the broadcast. I actually ended up failing to prepare my food, so. I'm eating my meals today, sans carrots. Now, some people will say that carrots are not good for you, but they certainly seem to be okay for me in my current circumstances. Good to see you, Lori Chavez. How's everything going with your process? You talking to Thunder Chicken or me? But yeah, either way, it could be both, right? And good to see you, Dick, as always. We're going to do a panel show after this one, by the way, if you're down for that. If you paid for StreamYard by now, we could actually connect to your broadcast possibly if you wanted to make one. Or not. We'll see how that goes. Or maybe you could connect to mine. I don't know. These are just ideas. I've got ideas. And I also want to get to the off to the races portion of the title because, man, did anybody notice yesterday when, Kim actually broached the topic of since I'm presently in the Ozarks, and he had mentioned that he seemed to enjoy this region when he visited for the first time. I'm not a fan. I got to be honest with you. Not a fan. I really don't like being in places where it's all white folks and it's all white people up here. Surprise, surprise. Kim is drawn to an area of the country that's almost exclusively honkies, right? Well, I'm used to having some darker skinned folks around. Yeah, not a huge fan of the region, but my mother lives in the Ozarks now. So, and in fact, I did technically live in the Ozarks for about 10 years, but that was Fayetteville, Northwest Arkansas, which is the Boston Mountains, which is technically a part of the Ozarks, but it's not really the Ozarks. And if it is, I guess it would be the most highly populated area. I don't know, is Springfield considered the Ozark? Springfield, Missouri? It's bigger. Anyway, I digress. So he brings that up, and then by the time Drew says, yeah, he wants to do this TrutherCon, which, when me and Truther Cop were talking about it, we were calling it Truther Natty, right? And that was when I still had an income, and I said, I'd pledged up to $1,000. I said, I'll pay for the convention space or to rent to rent some sort of conference room in a hotel somewhere, up to $1,000. And, if the conference room is $500 for 2 days or whatever, then, I'll put the rest of the money can go to catering or whatever. And I do like that Kim thinks big, right? But his mind's off. He's apparently done a bunch of conferences and he's talking about Las Vegas. And Kim, I want to point out to you, Kim, that, out of this so-called truth community and this channel and Drew's channel and, maybe some other channels, I mean, how many people do you think are actually going to show up to this thing? I'm thinking between 15 and 30, probably closer to 15. And I think out of the 15, it's going to be mostly people who would actually participate in the live streaming. And that to me is the most attractive aspect, is not so much meeting people in the flesh, which I do enjoy, being able to poly with my peeps, in the flesh, of course. However, to me, it would be the notion of an in-person live stream broadcast, especially since I'm not so great on these panels, as you may have noticed. And that's part of the reason why one of my major focuses of the Benton School of Broadcasting is Panels 101. And in fact, I may need to take a remedial course. I may not even be up to Panels 101 yet, and then some people are ready to clap out, right? If anybody knows what that means. Some people don't need it at all, but I'm way, way better in the physical realm when I can read people's body language and just sort of intuitively get a sense of what's going on. So yeah, it would be great, right? But I don't think we need to do it in Las Vegas, Kim. I had proposed Chicago, even Dallas-Fort Worth. I think would be possible. I think the number one factor, because with the economy like it is, and I hate to even use that term, but economically speaking, and based on the size of the event, I think you could, just my opinion off the top of my head, I think it would be very easy and affordable to rent some sort of conference space in an affordable hotel somewhere near an airport, by the way, or in an area that has convenient connections from the airport, where people would not necessarily have to rent a car if they flew. But then, of course, some people would most likely choose to drive. I don't know that I'll be flying ever again after what we've gone through with this fake pandemic. I don't know that that's going to happen. But yeah, and again, back to me mastering my emotions, and that's my major, that's what I'm working on every day, among other things. And again, my path is progress. My purpose is to be of service. But again, every man hath not the same office. So, I would say nobody can really tell you what your purpose is other than yourself. And I think it was, I believe it was OTW had played a Wes Watson clip. And I do appreciate some of the Wes Watson stuff. But in this particular clip, I noticed that Wes Watson was telling the audience what their purpose was. And I'm just thinking, well, Wes, how could you possibly know what my purpose is? Well, he can't, because why? Because every man hath not the same office. And I don't believe that because it's written in the Bible. I read that in the Bible and it rang true with me. I resonated with it intuitively. I know that that's a true statement. Again, correct philosophy is the absence of incorrect philosophy. And to me, that is correct philosophy across the board, or manifested truth. We don't all serve the same function in this realm, right? And I've said before, my path is progress. And I would encourage people, again, not advice, by the way, but I would encourage people, the more that they're able to internalize versus externalize, the more that people can look inward, and instead of presupposing that why you're here, or that one, let me try to break this horrible habit of saying you. The more that one, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the more that one or an individual is able to direct that focus inward and really get to know what's going on in there. And even perhaps with the help of psychedelics, by the way, this is where psychedelics could be a benefit, although I don't recommend any substances at all, ever. But I've certainly found it to be helpful, is to find out just exactly what in the world are you here to do, right? Generally, not specifically. Oh, by the way, we're supposed to avoid absolutes and we're supposed to avoid general statements. But when I asked the universe, if you want to call it that, when I asked whatever I asked, what is my purpose? Well, the answer I received immediately was to be of service. Now then, and I know I'm repeating myself to some extent here, but then we can get into, well, I don't want to be of service. Well, it's like, okay, but who are you, silly human? Why would you assume, silly human, Mr. Benton, that what you want is relevant? Like, again, we're just assuming that what we want is relevant. Why? Or that what I want. Lori, good to see you. I think I already greeted you, but anyway, I'm in broadcast mode. Even if you don't do a PMA, what is that? You should still correct your record, brother. I don't know. Or probably not talking to me. Again, on some level, I just always assume all of the comments are directed at me, whether they are or not. Indeed, music holds a secret. I really like how he puts things some of the time. He says, my next flight is out of here. Indeed, sir. Indeed, sir. But I do have a car now. Which is the source of some trepidation, as a shout out to Big L. And I'm a bad friend, so I'm going to do my best to reach out and contact Big L more often. The fact is, over the course of our, dare I say, friendship, at this point, he's typically been the one contacting me versus me contacting him. So it's time for me to grow up a little bit and grow and mature and value a friendship enough to actually contact the other person. So it's my intention to do so. Why did I bring up Big L? I've already forgot. Anyway, I must have needed to say some of that. How is the Nissan? Thank you for asking, Mason Free. And I do want to get to the comments because I took some criticism in one of the comments about my car that I want to address. I love it, man. And I got talking to Big L last night because he's in Texas, by the way. A lot of people from Dallas are really into fast cars and fast pickup trucks. And he's got, Big L's got an AMG Mercedes that he's been getting, rehabilitated to get. I think it's back on the road now. It's off at the detail shop, from what I understand. And Big L was not aware that I'm also a big car guy, although not so much nowadays. But I love cars, man. Always have. And In fact, grew up, my dad was fascinated with Volvos. So we had brand new Volvos, which generally speaking were not performance cars. But as some may remember, back in the mid 90s when the 850 Turbo came out, the hyped up version of the 850 Turbo was the 850 T5R. Of course, my dad purchased one immediately upon its release. And then in fact, when the Audi TT Roadster came out, he bought that right away. And then he leased it actually. And at a certain point, he realized that he wasn't driving it enough. It had a whole bunch of miles left on the lease. It needed a set of tires because for whatever reason, that car came with tires that wear out within like 5,000 miles. It was crazy. And I said, hey, man, and this was back when I was still with ex-wife number one. I said, hey, man, I'll drive the rest of those miles and I'll put a set of tires on it. You know, so I actually had an Audi TT Roadster in the garage. First year it was out in Arkansas, for God's sakes. So that was, and by the way, not a fast car, not a high horsepower car, but certainly, you know, a fun car to drive. And my car at the time was a 91 Eagle Talon all-wheel drive turbo 5-speed, which was those cars are junk, man, as far as the unibody is just trash, but it's obviously a nice drivetrain. Anyway, I digress off of the cars. We can get into that at another time. And I do like that the live chat is not always about the broadcast. So I need to become a little more astute at picking through the comments before I just start reading them. You know what, Mason Free? And here's another problem is I don't know what kind of, I forgot to ask this guy what kind of oil he was using. And I had a 2009 exact same car. You know, it's a 6-speed hatchback Versa. And I'll get into the criticism of Nissans in general and that car specifically here shortly. And most of the criticism of that car revolves around the fact that most of them are automatics, and out of those, many of them are CVT or continuously variable transmissions, and they're complete garbage, right? Now they do have a 4-speed automatic that's not a CVT, but the 6-speed manuals are great. It's a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder with a 6-speed manual, dude. It's a great fucking platform for what it is. You know, it's a great setup. You know, it's only like 130 horsepower, so you know we're limited in what we're doing here. But it's a fun car to drive, believe it or not. But yeah, I got 37 miles a gallon my first road trip, but a lot of that had to do with I specifically chose routes for fuel efficiency, and then you know I drove intentionally, very deliberately. So I think it'll probably get over 30. But my 09 didn't get near the gas mileage. I'm starting to think maybe that would have to do with the oil that I was putting in it. Yeah, I was using the Quaker State, which the engine loved it from a performance standpoint, but it did not get good fuel economy. So, and also this is a very difficult, and it was a higher mileage also. My 09, when I bought it, had like, I think it had 120K already on it. This one's got 71,000. But then like the spark plugs, this is one of those ridiculous cars where you have to remove the fucking intake to change the spark plugs. Like, why would anybody ever design something like that? It's beyond me. You know, I don't understand. I don't know, Mason. I'm not exactly sure how much it costs to fill it up. It does have a small tank, so I don't really know. Yeah. Well, I guess that depends on what you like to drive, because with your name, American Patriot, and is this Mitchell, by the way? And I think Mitchell, if this is Mitchell, I think Mitchell drives one of the least fuel efficient cars on the road, a Toyota Tundra. So different strokes for different folks, as it were. But the fact is, I'm going to drive this thing from 71,000 miles to 150,000 miles. And if anything goes wrong with it, it'll be the alternator. That's it. Maybe the starter, but I doubt it. And it might need a battery at some point. Other than that, nothing is going to go wrong with this car, as long as I don't tear up the front end, because the front ends tear up super good on this. There you go. Well, I don't get 39, but probably more like 32 combined real world. Yeah, Patriot. There you go, Carl. P-A-Y. Indeed, sir. And if a person prefers a manual car, just getting a manual in the first place is difficult, especially on the used market. Music Holds the Secrets Jeep only gets 13 miles a gallon. Oh, you have a Yaris. How do you like the Yaris? Because I was looking at a Yaris actually. Yeah, 39 freeway, 30 street. Well, I drew. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on the car talk, but yeah, this is a 2012 1.8 liter, by the way. Dude, already been hit with 2 hailstorms. It got hit again. It got hit again with a hailstorm. Yeah. I mean, should I just go out there and break the windshield myself at this point? I mean, what is this? Oh, we were going to play JFK Beta. My apologies. Let's do that. I do appreciate JFK Beta. He's see, I critique, like, I'm critical of Kim before the storm, and then I misbehave and I wake up to a JFK Beta that's video that's very abstractly. It's critical of me, but very abstractly, which I prefer. These younger generations, I've noticed, are a little more evolved than us boomers, and I say that tongue in cheek, as I am technically Gen X, which as we know no longer exists in the minds of the youngsters. All right, let me share the screen. Somebody needs to come up with some tools to more easily do screen shares and such within. Here's JFK Beta's video. I'll drop his link here shortly, and all that good stuff. Good to see you, Jimbo Khan. Indeed, Gen X power. That's right. Yep. And Music Holds a Secret loves his Yaris. Bought it brand new in Texas in 07. There you go, sir. Have you seen this new Corolla GR, the all-wheel drive 3-cylinder turbo? Have you seen these things? In Mexico, they have a 3-cylinder turbo all-wheel drive Yaris. And it's manual only, by the way. Check out this new Corolla when you get a minute, the GR Corolla. Pretty cool car. Yeah, watch out for the hail clouds. Indeed. All right. Here's JFK Beta. Let's check him out.
I bet you'll never guess my spirit animal. A raccoon.
It's a monkey.
I think.
Do you remember that cartoon Daria by the guy who did Beavis and Butthead? You might remember that show.
Possibly.
Yeah, I used to like that a lot. Yeah, Daria is my spirit animal. I relate to Daria very strongly.
I know. I'm going to be sick.
Bienvenidos a the Mall of the Millennium.
I love it. Well done, sir. And I like the abstraction. Him and JFK Beta and Provo Kid both seem to have these very abstract minds, which I appreciate. So well done, sir. It's like every time I see it, I actually figure out another thing. It's like there's a lot in there, man. There's a lot of nuance. Yes, indeed, American Patriot. Good to see you. Maybe it's not Mitchell. Gen X reporting in. Yeah, Mitchell's got so many screen names. It's sometimes I just think everybody's Mitchell, other than the regular people, the regular posters. But anyway, good to have you, American Patriot. Although I will be very critical of patriotism and MAGA and traditional family values conservatives, so-called, by the way, because it doesn't actually exist, as we know, effectively speaking, right? It's so much in the minority, people actually living these principles, that it may as well not exist. And certainly there's no such thing as a conservative politician. That's a non-starter. Not one, not even Rand Paul. No, sir, not a conservative. Oh, good to see you, Cecil. Nice to meet you. It did not have any, yeah, it's got a little bit, it's got some dings. Yeah, there's even some dings in the side because of the wind blew some of the hail into the side of the car. And, it's a little bitty Mickey Mouse car, so it's certainly like very light metal. Yeah, I'm thinking about having them removed because it does actually, the car's got a nice finish on it to this point. So I'm probably actually going to, and in the old days, I used to wash and wax my cars frequently. So I'll probably actually, and usually I'll buy beat up cars that don't have a good paint job. So since this one actually has a decent paint job, I'll probably end up putting a finish on it at some point. Good to see you, unindoctrinated. Good to see you, sir. I like the PFP there. Serious, but not too serious. Indeed. Good to see you, Sherelle Snow. Shout out to you. We're just hanging out. We're chilling. We're seeing what's on Benton's mind, checking in with the chat. Shout out to the chat. going to a new format. My first stream of the day, I'm planning on somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half. Although, we're already 40 minutes in, so I haven't even really got to a lot of the things I wanted to get to. So it could go longer. But then I want to do a more panel oriented for the second broadcast, which will be Benton School of Broadcasting themed. In fact, Panels 101 would be the subject for today. Yeah, I think you're right, RT. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's good. That's good information, sir. I do appreciate it. Well, that happens, Clay. I don't know. Sometimes people, I don't know. Maybe your PFP or whatever we're calling that these days. Maybe she's frightened. I don't know. Can't speak for her. But these things have a way of working themselves out over time, I've noticed. Yeah, well, I didn't think you were bothered, but yeah, it's more of an observation, right? He said it's just fine. Oh, man, what a mess. Let me go ahead and drop Mr. Beta's link here. See if he can get some subs and some views. There you go. All those whom proceed with presumed authority are glaringly frauds. I'm struggling with this some. Thank you, Scott Corn. I think you're hitting at the core of what I allow. See, and this is where I've become very militant in my thinking over the years. So I think you're hitting on, this is why I allowed myself to be, number one, become irritated, and number two, act out on my irritation in a way that could arguably be inappropriate. It's that presumed authority, right? It's the and this is when I wrote the comment and now I guess I'll have to go read RT's comment, but initially where I was coming from is, yeah, I understand that people want to be helpful and help solve problems. I get that. And that I also have that inclination, but that's like a reaction, right? It's then you get into this idea of are we reacting to stimulus, or are we, looking within and really observing the other person? In this case, the other person would be me, right? Observing that person enough to realize, okay, they're letting me know that this is not the time to continue to attempt to proffer advice, right? Or problem solve. And this is one of the major, I've identified this, and I'm not even the one that I've identified this, but in fact, I read literally all of the material available on the internet back around 2008-ish in the realm of dating and relationships, the so-called pickup artist thing. This was before Mystery TV show, that ridiculous show, The Pickup Artist. It was right around the time the book The Game came out, but I was already pretty deep into that ridiculous community at the time. Although thankfully I never had to behave in such ridiculous manners to attract attention as those bozos. But don't hate the player, hate the game, right? I don't believe in cock blocking. So whatever works, right? Whatever the ladies respond to. Anyway. And I'm far beyond all of that now, but I certainly studied it. So one of the major, and I've always, even before I learned anything logically in my logical brain about, in my conscious mind, how to deal with, a lady in the context of a so-called romantic relationship, I was able to have wives and girlfriends, and much of that was of their doing, believe it or not. We all know what I wanted, because I am a typical man, or a typical male in that regard. But we're wired that way. It's not really our fault, especially back in the days when the nightmare dystopian beast system, still allowed the young males to produce, mostly normal levels of testosterone, right? Goodness. And like I said before, this MGTOW or men going their own way, that would never have been an option for me. I would have had to be, I was damn near 40 before that would have even been anywhere near an option. And now I'm still the same old me, although I'm an evolved version. And now they don't want nothing to do with me, which is fine, because I never really did anything to bring them into my life in the first place. So, and I've discovered that I'm an actual hermit, which is nice. Not one of these Johnny come lately, the internet told them that they're introverts. No, I was in college with 100 friends, actual friends, and very successful socially, and would do things like go bowling by myself because I like to go bowling. And I wanted to bowl without having to engage in a bunch of chit chat or have to wait too long for it to be my turn, right? And I'm not any good at bowling, by the way, but I don't have a hook or anything like that. But it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I always thought it was strange when this idea of eating alone, and I was always confused by that. I never felt uncomfortable going to a restaurant and sitting down and eating a meal by myself. Never felt strange to me, even as I had a lot of friends. Yeah, bowling is fun, Quantum Epic. Indeed it is. Have you ever gone by yourself, though? Because I will challenge Quantum Epic at the level of she seems to believe she's an introvert, and I don't see how that could possibly be the case. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I've been wrong before, but that doesn't seem possible to me based on my observations of your psychology, ma'am, but perhaps I'm wrong. I don't know. I think introversion is the easiest way to detect it is what does a person do by themselves that could otherwise be done, in conjunction with other folks, right? Activities that could be group activities that the person chooses to do by themselves, not because they don't have friends or people who are available. I certainly could have found someone to go bowling with me. But anyway, one of the major stumbling blocks is when a woman she's sharing her feelings around a problem or an obstacle or something she is experiencing in her life. And by the way, males are becoming this way to some extent also, but then the more masculine. So things have gotten so confused. I don't even know that this is even down to biological sex anymore with the chemical attacks, as Lumutami has so astutely noted. And I do think there's something to that, and others. I think Dick maybe addressed that, but so the more masculine of the two will then immediately launch into a process of problem solving, which drives the lady nuts, or the more feminine partner nuts, because it's kind of an insult, really, because it's implying that, well, you are too dumb to figure this out, so let me speak some words, which, by the way, speaking words to somebody rarely, if ever, actually solves a problem. I mean, let's be honest. That's just, going around making suggestions. And I used to do this, by the way. I'm one of the biggest know-it-alls you've ever met. I used to just go around just obliviously blasting people with my input, my unasked for input and advice. Now, what I've trained myself to do is, if I'm observing someone that's attempting to solve a problem that I'm not involved with, right? And by the way, none of you are involved with whatever issues I'm going through trying to register my car. It has nothing to do with any of you. And I'm not trying to be rude, but it doesn't. So if I observe another human being attempting to overcome an obstacle or solve a problem that I'm not involved with, what I'll do is I'll observe them, right? And then I'll be present in the moment with them. Now, some of this is because a cult program needed to behave this way as far as being present in the moment. So I understand it doesn't really come naturally to most of us, but I believe anybody can become better at it than this. And so they will say the problem to me. So I will just be like, yeah, man, that's a bummer. Like, empathetically, because it's like, I could imagine that if I was in their shoes, how I would feel about these things, right? Frustration, irritation, annoyance, blah, blah, blah. It's inconvenient, depending on the actual problem. Again, speaking generally, by the way, speaking generally. Yeah, there you go. Bowling alone. Well, I'm competitive, sir. He says bowling alone crosses the line when you start keeping score. Well, I'm competitive in that way. So, yeah. Is Mitchell? Yeah. What's Mitchell doing? Well, and then Quantum Epic, she says you might be right. Maybe I'm part introverted and extroverted. I would say this. I would say that exists on a spectrum. So, it would be possible perhaps to be perfectly balanced between introversion and extroversion. Yeah. But the most introverted people, such as myself, who's an actual hermit, I prefer to be by myself most of the time. That's my preference, right? Now, I have social skills. I love socializing with people. I'm on here doing live streams for hours at a time. But you may notice, like yesterday, there's large periods of time goes by and I'm not engaged in the conversation. If you're on the panel, Quantum Epic, you're talking. You're engaged every moment of the way, right? Now, what I would say is that for an actual introvert, that level of intense socializing on a regular basis drains an introvert's energy. But an extrovert gains energy from it. Now, I gain energy from socializing as long as it's very limited, right? I cross over very quickly into, well, now I'm just being drained of my energy because of so much social interaction, right? Because I am an actual hermit, so I will step back and just kind of do my own thing. I don't know. Well, this is a discourse, so I mean, that is kind of what we're doing here, right? Vol cell. There you go. But yeah, I talk to myself all day long in my head. I have conversations with myself, but I don't hear things. This is what's great about being me is I don't hear voices. I have an intuitive, direct perception of it's not a voice, it's an idea, right? My interface into the present moment is at the level of thoughts and ideas. I don't feel the present moment. I don't feel anything about whatever happens in the present moment. Now, extreme events, I will obviously have some sort of, lizard-like fight or flight or fear reaction to, right? Or maybe I will be, I am filled with the Holy Spirit from time to time, but, or just, joy and gladness. But other than that, I've come to recognize through my observations that what I estimate to be 85% of the masses, their interface into the present moment is what they feel about what's happening. And for me, not only do I not feel anything in the moment, now I do have feelings. People, and when I say this, it's immediately, oh, you're saying you're a robot. Well, it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm a very direct communicator. If I wanted to communicate to you that I'm a robot with no emotions or a Dr. Spock, I would just say that. I wouldn't go through this whole explanation of how this manifests, right? I just don't tend to consider my emotions to be very important. But in order to advance in life, I've found it, or advance on my path, which my path is progress, I found it necessary to get in touch with these feelings and emotions, which I've done over many years, to understand what do they actually mean, if anything, while my logical brain still doesn't think they really are very important. And I don't think my feelings are very important. I don't think your feelings are very important necessarily. Although, for me to hurt your feelings, if I do something that I know is going to hurt your feelings, then to me, that's an incorrect action, right? Other than that, if I'm just living my life, if somebody has a feeling about how I live, that's your problem, right? Because I don't think that's very important. And I think that's where a lot of the codependency and a lot of the person A using person B for person A's own gratification comes in, is through this people attempting to babysit and placate the other's emotional states. And I think you see that with a lot of these younger generations of males who were raised by single moms. And it seems to me like, based on my understanding, and I know I'm all over the map here, but I just sort of have to go with the inspiration sometimes. So what I'm detecting in my pop psychology rant here is that a lot of these younger males growing up with a single mom, or the dad who was so ineffectual and emasculated that it really didn't even matter that he was physically present. So the son then gets he gets into this process of placating and detecting mommy's emotions, placating her emotions. He almost like tiptoeing on eggshells based on mommy's emotions, right? And then they carry that pattern into life later on as adults. And then I've even noticed people trying to do that to me. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are you even addressing my emotional state? Like, I barely even address my own emotional state. Like, why are you like, this is completely inappropriate. Like, it's just like, that's a boundary that shouldn't, in my view, nobody should be trying to cross that boundary to try to address my emotions, unless it's like, oh, you can tell I'm really fucking sad today because I do wear my emotions on my sleeve. If I'm feeling a strong emotion, I can't hide it, even if I want to. Other than that, just this, oh, are you mad at me type of stuff, right? I think a lot of that comes back to the mommy issues. Well, old Benton, and this is probably where the undiagnosed autism comes into effect. Dude, my entire childhood, I never considered my mom's feelings about anything ever. Now you can say, oh my God, that sounds horrible. I don't know. Is it? If a mom wants to raise an actual strong masculine boy who then grows up into a strong masculine man, I think part of that is, why would I ever even consider my mother's feelings? Now, again, not doing things intentionally to hurt her feelings. I'm just saying my mom's emotional state on a day in, day out basis was neither here nor there for me. Now, she did, have a lot of mood swings, and she was upset much of the time, and her and my dad didn't really get along. But that was his problem, by the way. They were having arguments. It didn't have nothing to do with me. I had my own bedroom. I just fucked off to my room and let them have at it, right? It didn't have nothing to do with me. So, I was never in that space of, constantly detecting mommy's emotional state and then tailoring my behavior to try to placate or assuage her feelings. And I think that's very harmful to a child to be put in those positions, right? It's bad, it's traumatic, it's not good. So, and now we're actually seeing generations of males with daddy issues and mommy issues, both. And then, with the ladies more inclined towards the possible daddy issues. And I can certainly tell that that's prevalent based on, I come across so seriously in my tone of voice and my body language, even though I am, a skeleton more or less by now, my serious manner, my facial expressions, I do trigger these daddy issues in a lot of ladies. And my thing is just like, look, ladies, I know I'm triggering your daddy issues, but like, I don't even have kids. Like, I don't even think this way. Like, what even is this, right? I'm 18 in my brain. I'm not even barely even grown. Well, I agree, RT, and I think this comes out of trauma. See, he says there is a thing called being a situational extrovert, where an introvert can appear extroverted in certain situations, such as public speaking, but doing that sharply drains the person's battery. Yeah, and again, being an introvert doesn't mean one can't give a speech or, do a lecture or, participate in some sort of group presentation, right? Like, it doesn't mean they're completely hobbled as human beings. And then also, again, it exists on the spectrum. So a person can be more inclined to introversion, but still not be that introverted, right? Like, but I need very little human interaction, me personally. But I do enjoy talking to people. I enjoy broadcasting. Oh, and I was brainwashed by a cult from the age of about 2 years old to, interface with people in specific ways. And I was actually formally trained in public speaking. So I do agree with what you're saying here, for the most part. It's called LARPing. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly, RT. Exactly. Yeah, the battery gets recharged with alone time. Yep, indeed. Will parasocial dynamics be addressed in the broadcasting lesson? I don't know. Maybe there is a lot of that going on, right? And shout out to Chalk Body Outline, Drew World Order, the backup channel, Get Chalked Up here on YouTube, where he's the one that taught me about parasocial relationships. It makes a lot of sense. And for whatever reason, he's found himself on the receiving end of a lot of parasocial dynamics over time that I've observed, much to Mr. CBO's chagrin, and then just like, wow, this is crazy. Yep. Jimbo Khan says, that's me. Well, see, what they did to me as a child was so pernicious that I actually believe that not only was I an extrovert, I believed I was one of the most extroverted people there was. And so I spent many, many years just constantly draining my own battery, not recognizing that that's what I was doing, because I had this, like, I had a near limitless energy resources, it seemed, right? But I didn't realize, I'm actually draining the fucking battery here. I finally figured it out. It took a long time. How well do we even know ourselves at some level, right? Or how well does one know oneself, I should say. Indeed, Quantum Epic, indeed. She has a lot of respect for Drew and EBT. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. And two excellent fathers, as far as I can tell, which is, I do, shout out to the mothers, by the way, and shout out to the fathers. But, fathers are becoming more and more rare, as we've seen. And I know for me, I would be dead or in jail without a strong dad. I mean, there's just no fucking question about it at this point. I was a wild man. I was a maniac, lunatic, especially as a teenager. Yeah, if they didn't seem smart, I wouldn't have found some of the other channels. Indeed, QE, indeed. Yep, 32 in the chat. Shout out. Thanks for listening. Much appreciated. It's a bit of a mundane broadcast, I must say. Looking at my notes, haven't even addressed most of them. And yeah, the Paul enslaved and his dad stuff, if anybody here's been following that, and I haven't followed much of it, but here recently I'm starting to identify with Paul a lot because when I was Paul's age, I had almost no relationship with my dad, and it's taken many, many years. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I believe I understand Jack Talcott's psychology way more in depth than anybody else that I've observed trying to analyze his psychology, because my father's psychology is very similar to Mr. Talcott's. And you know what I'm noticing, and it's just fascinating. And I really wish I had the clips ready to play, but you know, maybe take my word for it or not. It's up to you. But I noticed that Paul's dad, you know, Paul was kind of expressing some of his ideas and feelings about this, whatever's going on with his dad. And then there was two older men, right? Boomers. There was two boomers. And I'm assuming that Paul's dad's a boomer. And I guess Paul's a millennial, technically, because I'm Gen X. But my dad, you know, it's Arkansas. So I was the firstborn. So my dad was 20 when I was born, right? So I'm Gen X. My dad's a boomer. And, you know, we got these old men on there, and these old men are kind of going to bat for Paul's dad and just like making all of these excuses and say, well, Paul, have you considered that your dad might be going through this thing or going through that thing? And I think we also kind of saw this with the story Drew told here yesterday on the broadcast about his dad. You know, Drew, you know, I can't speak for Drew, but what I perceived was that Drew more or less felt like, to be a good person, or for whatever reason, Drew was compelled to at least attempt to, you know, facilitate some sort of interaction with his dad, that if his dad was willing to behave appropriately, could have possibly, because apparently they never really had a relationship as far as I can tell. So, you know, the first step towards possibly a relationship blooming, and then over time, and then what we've seen is that, well, now it seems like the door is shut on that forever, most likely. But then I noticed that the human being, we're wired for hope. So I saw a lot of comments in the live chat about, you know, well, maybe in the future. Well, here's the thing is, folks, number one, I don't know how old this guy is. You know, who even knows how much long, you know, people are dropping dead, man, out here. Number one. Number two, he's still Drew's dad's going to be the same person 5 years from now that he is now, right? So it's like, what's actually going to change? Now, I believe in the transcendent potential of an individual, right? But based on what Drew's said about his dad's past, I don't believe in that individual's potential. You know, so, you know, where is the hope? If in the future maybe they will reconnect and then give it another go. Well, but Drew's dad's going to be the same person in 5 years, meaning that even if Drew, for whatever reason, you know, contacted his father yet again, his father's still probably going to very quickly do something that Drew finds unacceptable, which, by the way, that's called boundary setting. Okay. And this kind of gets back to yesterday, even though I did a poor job of doing this. You know, in order for me to protect myself at the level of my own humanity, again, we've talked about the harm that's done when person A uses person B for person A's own gratification, right? And people can say that, oh, we care about you, Benton, we want to help you. Okay, well, if that's true, observe me and recognize that what you're doing, not only is it never going to help me, number two, it's actually annoying and irritating the shit out of me. So how am I being helped by someone doing things that, if they were paying attention to me and my humanity and the words coming out of my mouth, a mature adult who's evolved spiritually, who's evolved their conscious awareness, should be able to pay enough attention to me to realize, oh, okay, even though the person has a true motivation of wanting to help me, I would say that they're still obliged to observe how I'm reacting to what they're trying to force upon me, by the way. And I view this as a transgression. So when the person starts to go down the road of giving advice, that's okay. Now, I don't do that myself, and I'm going to go back to the earlier explanation. I don't think I ever completely finished on how I try to offer advice, because I sidetracked myself. So hopefully I'll go back and tie up that loose thread. But so I can, and again, by the way, what does Jesus say in the Bible? Turn the other cheek. So forgive the first transgression. And I do consider that to be a transgression. Unasked for advice is aggression as far as I'm concerned. And yes, I do take it that seriously. And I strongly set boundaries in all of my relationships. Very important. Very important. And now we're back to the parasocial dynamics, right? And not enough people do this, in my view, especially in these codependent relationships. And, you know, I haven't studied codependency because, thank God, I'm not wired for it. I haven't really experienced it, other than I get a creepy feeling when people try to involve me in their codependency, which has happened to some extent in the past. But so you can't have a codependent relationship and have healthy boundaries. Healthy, healthy, the proper enforcement of healthy boundaries precludes one from being engaged or involved in a codependent relationship. Meanwhile, if I know that the other person, if they are transgressing against my boundary and that's harming me, okay, that's their fault initially. If I continue to allow it to happen, they're not abusing me. From my perspective, I'm now abusing myself. And this is where I got to with my father. I realized at a certain point, this, number one, this is abusive, what he's doing. Number two, I'm allowing it. So this actually becomes, I'm abusing myself. Well, I can't look myself in the mirror and be abusing myself. Like that's crazy, right? So ultimately, the way I view this stuff with, and now I'm transitioning from Drew's dad to Paul's dad, the way I view a lot of what Paul's doing with attempting to do with Paul's father is all he's really doing is setting healthy, normal boundaries, which by the way, a lot of these boomer males are so fucking classically narcissistic. I don't know what happened, but they are the most narcissistic generation as far as the males having and what I mean by, okay, unhealthy narcissism, where it actually hurts them. Because ultimately, yeah, Paul does suffer if him and his dad can't have a healthy relationship, but who suffers more? I don't have kids. I have to imagine if I had a son, right? If I was my dad, and I am pretty fucking awesome on some level, right? To not have a relationship, yeah, that sucks for me as the son. It sucks for him more, right? So who suffers the most? Yeah, Paul suffers, but who suffers the most from this? It's Paul's dad, I would say, right? Why? Part of that is because Paul's dad so far is unable to get away from 0% humility. Well, my father was in that space for a time. And to his credit, he's been able to move forward from 0% humility into some level of humility. Not much, but enough. And I'm the type of person, I'll just straight up tell you. Like I just straight up told my dad, I said, listen, man, you know, I know what I'm saying makes sense. You know, I know what I'm talking about. I say, if I tell you some shit, I say, all you really got to do is say, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. That's really all you got to do. And he actually has done that a couple of times, to his credit. But it's almost like I have to figure out what will facilitate the relationship and then tell him. And then he either receives it or he doesn't. Now, for what we're seeing from Paul's dad is he's just not receiving any of it, while also trying to have arguments with someone Paul's one of the best people at having arguments. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So like, is this really how Paul's dad's going to live his life? We're not going to have a healthy relationship with his son, and also have arguments with somebody who's super good at arguing. Same thing with my dad. It's like, I think he's finally figured it out. Like there's nobody wins, you know, when we have some sort of debate or argument, right? Like it's just fucking pointless. And I'm super good at it. Yeah, Paul clearly has unresolved daddy issues, and the world has a separate spirit. Your mama died, Travis, as a result. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, Carl. You're not wrong. Although I do find the spirit of your mama stuff interesting. Boomer spirit car is loud Harley. Yeah, well, and I am blessed enough to have a dad who could afford literally any vehicle he wanted back in the day and chose to drive Volvos. If that tells you anything about his, and he's a very sensitive soul for sure. Yeah. And, you know, I have a good relationship with both of my parents because we both worked at it, but I've worked at it more than my dad has. My mom's, it's at least 50-50. She's probably worked at it more than I have, honestly, but I put a lot of work into having a good relationship. Thank you, Mr. Miyagi. I probably would by now. Now, the thing is, my sisters both had kids right around the age of 20 or so, and they just repeated the exact same cycles that my parents, meaning overbearing, way too disciplinarian, way too aggressive and mean to the kids. So most likely, if I had had a child at the age of 20, I also would have fallen into that. And I like, as literally the only person in my family and my extended family who doesn't have children, literally the only one, I've said, look, I broke the cycle here, because if I had knocked some lady up at the age of 20, and believe me, it wasn't for lack of trying. Maybe my stuff doesn't work. I don't know, but I would have most likely just repeated the same cycle. So yeah, now at this age I could be, but I'm not going to be chasing some, I'm not going to be out there trying to have a catch with a 10-year-old and I'm 57 or 58. It's just not a thing. And by the way, probably not even going to be here then. Right. Hey, all right. Yes, I'm ready for the morning bike ride. Scott Core is taking us all on his morning bike ride. Indeed, I am. And then where I also get with Paul and his dad, yeah, we're going to go live again after this one, and we'll try to land this plane, Rob. But yeah, we're going to do more of a panel-themed Benton School of Broadcasting after this. I do need to take a break, though, in between and eat some food. So that one may actually start late. I don't know. I got 30 more minutes. Yeah, Benton live in 30 minutes, indeed. Spread the word. I need to wrap this up, I guess, so I can eat and get to the next broadcast. So what I noticed in my life is, since I am detail-oriented, my path is progress. I like self-improvement. I've noticed in many of my interactions and my relationships that when a problem crops up, frequently the solution ends up being, well, we're all going to stay the same. Benton, you do better. And I noticed some of that dynamic with Paul and his dad is, well, Paul's dad's clearly not going to change, probably not capable of it. Oh, but Paul needs to do better. And then, so when you had these two old men on the panel, and I actually came up there and sort of took them to task over it. I said, I find this disgusting. We got these two old men up here, making excuses for a loser. And I said, Paul, I don't know your dad, so it can't be personal. But we got two old men up here making excuses for another old man loser. And I find it appalling and disgusting. And I do. It is appalling and disgusting. And my dad has his own versions of that, where he'll sort of excuse these people's bad behavior. Oh, well, and I think some of that is the narcissistically, Talcott and some of these people, they feel like, and if you really pay attention to what Talcott is saying, especially when he first started showing up in these circles, he would frequently express how upset he was because people weren't considering his feelings and his viewpoints, right? And so that seems to be based on it. These other old men are kind of, well, have you considered that Paul's dad could be going through this or going through that? And I'm like, look, who cares what he's going through? What's that got to do with doing the right thing? Nothing. Has nothing to do with it. And I wish I'd finished the thread on how I give people advice, but ultimately it comes down to being present in the moment, recognizing their humanity and whatever they're feeling. And then when they're like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do about this problem, if I feel like I can offer constructive. Now, I will always revert to just, can I resolve this for them physically in the space, which I've done for many people many times. I don't talk about it a lot. There's a lot of times I've just physically been there and just solved somebody's problem. It's happened a lot of times, believe me. And people have done it for me as well. What goes around comes around. But then I'll say, hey, I have some ideas. Would you like to hear them? And then I wait. And if they say yes, I proceed. If they say no, I don't. And I was clearly saying no yesterday to the advice. But then, so what I allow to irritate and frustrate me that I acted out on is, why do the Mr. Fix-It problem solvers have to go keep doing laps around the track of trying to help Benton when Benton already said he doesn't want your help? Why are we continuing? But I'm willing to forgive the first transgression. Turn the other cheek. Well, if you slap my cheek and I turn the other one to you, well, if you slap the other one, there's no more cheeks to turn, sir. So that's what that means. Turn the other cheek means forgive the first transgression. If you keep doing it, now I got to stand up for myself. And that's not me being rude. That's y'all putting me in a position to have to stand up for myself. Okay. Now the way in which I did it, I don't think was a good way to do it. Right. But, thank God we've got Kim before the storm to just pop up when we need him to just solve all our problems over the metaverse by saying some words to us. It's ridiculous, and it's beyond arrogant. It's delusionally arrogant and narcissistic that we're all I'm so broken and lacking in intelligence and thought and care and regard for my own humanity and my own plight in this world that I need Kim to pop up and fix me. And he's so good at it, he can just say some words to me metaversally. I mean, think about that. Well, we've covered that. American Patriot says that means you're gay. Well, I think you may be projecting if this is who I'm thinking it is. But even if not, that's been well covered. Although, shout out to my boy EBT who points out that gay is an activity. Indeed, sir. Can he find some? I can find some outro music, actually. One moment, please. Why is my search bar going away? What is YouTube doing today? Very strange. Very strange. All right, we're going to get out of here so I can eat and get ready for the next broadcast. Hope to see some of you folks over there, and maybe some people will join the panel. Perhaps. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Pende Hum Mani 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 Pende Hum